So this is the Shipping Forum. I'm Susan, I'll be moderating. So just a brief introduction to what is going to be involved in the forum. So the purpose of the panel is to hear from those who ship traveling exhibitions and to get some insight on how it works from their perspective so that the working relationship between these institutions and the shippers can be improved. The purpose of the panel is not to discuss specific services, but to help museums better understand how to work with these shippers efficiently. So now just to introduce the panelists. Let's see here. Bear with me just one second. Okay, let's start from the other side. Technical glitch. Okay, so starting with Scott Pustai from Total Transportation Services. Thank you. As a young man, Scott Pustai's passion included visual arts, music, football, and fishing. Summer employment through high school and university ultimately led to a career focused on specialized moving services. In 1994, building on a then 14-year career, Scott founded Total Transportation Services, Inc. Now celebrating its 20th year, the company divisions now include fine art, rigging, and high-value special products. A father of 4, Scott takes great pride in his children, 3 of which currently work at Total Transportation. Robin Armstrong has managed many successful shipments, ranging from private collectors focusing on estate management to working with various museums and galleries for storage, transportation, and collections management needs. And finally, Gordon Butler, project manager for Packard. Gordon has over 27 years experience with Packard and is an integral part of the daily operations, as well as overseeing and providing his expertise and knowledge of special projects. So, just jumping into a few direct questions with, as has been the format so far with the Q&A session toward the end. Just a few introductory questions for the panel. So for those who among us are new to working with shipping companies for traveling exhibitions, what are the top 2 things that you want museums to know about shipping and logistics that they may not already know? And we'll start with you, Gordon.
Okay. Thank you very much. I don't know if that's close enough. So one of the more important things that we stress when discussing shipping arrangements with museums and galleries is scheduling. So scheduling well in advance can always assist in organizing the shipments and getting things done in a timely manner. And if you can project well in advance of when your shipping needs are, then it allows us greater flexibility on providing different solutions to your transportation needs. So you can keep costs down by allowing us the opportunity to maybe consolidate your shipment with other shipments. And when we're talking about specifics about how far out in advance, I think when you're budgeting your exhibitions, you often have to write grants and do those things well in advance, maybe a year, maybe even 2 years in advance. It's not a bad time to even talk to us at those points about your scheduling, what your needs are. And we can always put those into our schedules well in advance, and that greatly assists in moving forward. We can phone you in advance and organize things. So anytime you have an opportunity to schedule things well in advance, then it saves us time, and it eventually would save you any shipping requirements, or any costs.
Robin?
I'll keep this simple. I'm going to piggyback a little bit on what you just said, but time of the year is really important to us because we can plan and we can schedule based around that. That is an also direct correlate to you guys and your costs. So if you don't give us the timing up front, it's harder for us to plan and help you with your needs of what you really need. Secondary to that, we're not so scary. We're not frustrating, we're not complicated, and it doesn't have to be stressful. And a lot of people call me on a daily basis frustrated, they don't know how to get things done, they're not used to doing this. It's not complicated. Ask us questions. No question is a stupid question, and there's way more than one way to always get things done. And that's what we're here for. So we're not scary, and it doesn't have to be stressful.
Great, Scott.
To summarize, I think both my associates here pretty much covered everything very well. Our expertise is logistics and figuring out how to get something done. That's what we do. Planning the timing, the scheduling. You can tap into our experience and as Robin said, ask us all the questions. There is no silly question. We may have other solutions and ideas you may not have thought about. So the sooner you can engage us, perhaps in your planning process, we may be able to make some suggestions that help you. And as Gordon said, things that we can do to consolidate to help bring everybody's cost down.
Okay, so moving on to our next question, and we'll actually start with Scott this time.
Number 2 to cover too. You said 2 points, right?
Oh, pardon me. Okay, sorry, that's... Do you...
I got a second.
Oh, you do? Okay. More information is always great.
Every year, or actually twice a year, I get the opportunity to give a talk to the Museum Studies program at University of Toronto. A lot of younger students, I shouldn't say younger students, a lot of students who are new to the industry are coming through the program. And one of the lectures that's provided is on transportation or fine art transportation. And it's interesting, a lot of people don't understand why it's in place and why it's necessary and why fine art shippers are required. And it's, I best describe it as layers of protection. I think that's the best way to describe it, is that if you have an object to move, the first layer of protection is how you pack it and how you prepare it. And the second layer of protection might be a crate or something that you contain it in. And the third layer of protection is the care that people at the museums provide when moving it. And then the next layer of protection is with the shipping, is finding a carrier who's going to provide greater care. So layers upon layers of protection, and the protection that we offer beyond regular transport companies are in the layers that we offer our climate-controlled trucks, our secure vehicles. We have air ride suspension. Another layer that we provide is the expertise of our staff, who provide handling and careful handling, and they manage the artifacts carefully in the vehicles. And the other layer of protection is the expertise that the people in our office bring, and troubleshooting on the way and problem solving when crises or situations arrive that need attention. So explain to, as I say, the people at the Museum Studies program that the reason we're in place, and one of the things that I think museums need to know is that we are not regular shippers, and that we are a process of providing layers of protection to the artifacts that you wish to move. That's what I would say.
Do you have a second point as well, Robin? Or?
So my 2 points were time of year has a big impact, and then my second one is we're not scary. It doesn't have to be complicated, stressful, or frustrating. We can help you. We're in the solution business.
I wasn't sure if that was a kind of a spin-off or a second point. Anything anyone else has to offer on this question?
Maybe I'll add something in relation to how we load a climate trailer, just sort of as a general information for everybody, and for anybody who hasn't had an opportunity to take a look at the equipment outside, please make sure if you're going to do that today. Climate control trailers are designed to work best when there's airflow moving around the trailer. So at the front of the trailer, the set temperature is coming out of the reefer unit, blowing down the roof of the trailer, and typically designed to circulate down along the floor and then back along the walls to the return. What that means for us as the carrier, when we're loading those trailers, we may not always be able to load the trailer as tight as you may think. Because what could happen, if we load a trailer too tight and we block the airflow, what happens is the reefer unit simply can't function properly. So there are times where you may see a trailer roll in that may have some space open when you look on the floor, and you think that perhaps things could have been tightened up. We also have to be careful that we don't set it up for a failure, that the reefer unit won't be able to do its job and hold the temperature inside the trailer when we're transporting.
That's actually really good to know. So moving on to our second question. And we'll start with Scott, as long as he doesn't mind speaking again right away. Can you explain the fuel tax and how it impacts the cost of shipping traveling exhibitions?
Well, we all love the fuel tax, don't we? You guys love it, and believe me, we love it just as much. Unfortunately, it's the necessary evil out there. It's much like taxes. You can't get away from it. Over the course of time, our cost of operating has gone up. There's no secret there. Everybody here pulls up to a fuel station at one point or another, and I'm sure you're looking at the price on the pumps. It's no different for us running the trailers, the tractor trailers out there, any truck. So there is an organization, FCA, Freight Carriers Association, I believe, and they publish a notional recommendation. So what they do in their publication is identify, way back in the good old days, what the cost of fuel was and where it is today, and based on that, there's percentages of change and so on. As a carrier, certainly we can't absorb the added cost of the fuel. So that is handed back, unfortunately. There's various different ways to do it. Every transporter may have a slight difference in how they calculate it, but generally speaking, it's a cost recovery. The fuel surcharge, it should not be a profit center for us. It's not designed to be. It's designed to help us offset the cost of fuel. How do we make the fuel surcharge go away? The tariffs go up. There's either the tariffs go up and there is no fuel because we have to account for that added cost, or we keep it where it is, we maintain our tariffs, and we charge the fuel surcharge as it fluctuates weekly. So the FCA organization, they post every week their recommended change. That's for us as carriers to analyze and then follow. So as it goes down, we're quoting it less. As it goes up, we're quoting it more. It can be a challenge for us quoting on something on one of your exhibitions that might be traveling in a year or two from now. So, I guess it's just something to keep in mind. It's not something we can control as far as the fuel percentages and what we're paying at the pumps.
Robin, no, I don't think so.
Yeah.
Pretty much covers it.
Well, we should
It's
avoid,
not going away.
we should avoid calling it a tax. It's not a tax. We actually have a fuel surcharge, and tax has bad connotations to it. But the fuel surcharge, too, it assists us in, as Scott mentioned, our tariffs don't go up and down for actual transport as like a roller coaster ride, like they would if you had to include fuel all the time. Instead, we can let the fuel surcharge fluctuate up and down and try and maintain our transport tariffs at a more of a constant. And so that reflects, I guess, eventually on us that we are offering a consistent service at a regular price and a fair price that can be expected. And as Scott mentioned, it's the fuel that fluctuates and goes up and down, and is difficult to guess at the rate. So anyway, yeah.
Okay, so moving to our third question. For museums along the Trans-Canada, access to affordable shipping is far easier. What's the impact of being off of that corridor, and are there ways of organizing tours to mitigate that impact? Starting with Scott again.
There are the impact is the cost of the transport. Running on the main corridor, certainly as a transporter, any transporter has multiple shipments on the truck, so the cost is shared. For somebody who's in a very remote location, the further remote, the worse it is. For example, if we have to run a truck, any of us have to run a truck to Whitehorse and back, there's a fixed cost. We know what that's going to be, and if we're going for one crate, that's going to be an awfully expensive crate. If we have 10 shippers or 10 exhibitions on board, or we've got 5 coming, 5 going, certainly we can share that cost. So that would be my suggestion for how to mitigate the cost. Reach out to your neighbors. Timmins, reach out to your neighbors, anybody who's in a remote area, and if there are several people that are shipping all around the same time, then we can get those together, and there's an opportunity to consolidate. That's going to help on the shipping costs. Something I'm curious about when it comes to exhibitions that we're picking up or exhibitions that we're delivering to the same location. Anytime that we as the carrier can coordinate that we're delivering one exhibition, and while we're there picking the other one up and taking it away, it'll bring your costs down, as opposed to just going for that one event. Now, I don't know whether everybody has the room to pack up an exhibition and have it sit there when the new one comes in, or if you need to get it out because there's a period of time that you might be wanting to paint walls and prep your room. But there's something to consider if you have the space and can afford to do that with your time. It'll help to bring your costing down.
Yeah, I mean, just to add to that, anything across Canada, that's a bit the point of the shuttles, right? So how remote are you talking? If you're just an hour or two, let's say, outside of Calgary or Vancouver, for lack of better terms, we can get a truck up there, no problem. It's really not going to impact our schedule, while our truck is on the road. Now, I would maybe suggest if you're incredibly remote, like I said before, ask all sorts of questions, work with us, tell us exactly what you need and how you need to get it done. But another way is, if you're in northern Alberta, maybe you have a more efficient, cost-effective way to get that piece to Calgary. We can pick that piece up in Calgary, and then if it's going, let's say, Toronto, Ottawa, etc., you've got a proper fine art shipper for the majority of the way. It just depends on what you're shipping, how you're shipping it, and what your needs are. But there's, tons of depots all around that we work closely with, and there's always a solution to any single problem to help you maintain your budget while being able to have that piece travel and, have other people around the country see that piece.
Well, similar ideas in terms of whenever you can ship consolidated shipments from your venue to another venue is better than trying to do things in piecemeal. So if you can get all your objects together in one transport, that's always best. The cost from A to B will always be a sort of a fixed cost, and that cost can be reduced when additional shipments can be added. So the discounts and the cost savings are really passed on along to those venues that are on the route and that are the stops along the way. And perhaps the overall shipping costs can be reduced too if there are more stops along the way. But the cost from A to B usually remains the same. And if it's a full tractor trailer or a full truck, it'll probably be X amount of dollars. And you won't ever be able to save on that because that's the cost from going from A to B. It's when you have smaller shipments and when you want to consolidate shipments together or have more stops on the way that we begin to be able to provide cost advantages and get costs down. But it does mean that those points along the route have to be accessible and easily accessible. That's right. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so moving on to discuss very particularly loading docks. Over to Scott. What does the shipper need to know about your loading dock, and what are the implications of not having one?
I guess there's There's a couple of concerns that come to mind when when we're presented with that there is a loading dock. Trailer accessibility, can we get our trailer to the dock, or is it a dock that we can only get a smaller truck to? Things like dock height become an issue. Trailers generally have a standard floor height. Some docks are courier height dock. Those are kind of things that we're looking for. Dock height restrictions are another. The dock might be ideal, but there's a height restriction and we can't put a regular height tractor trailer in. We might need to look at putting in something lower. When there's no loading dock, that's when our tailgate units become your best advantage. And every one of us, we have tailgates under our units. Tailgates are various different size and weight capacities, but for us, knowing in advance, if you know the venue that you're talking to or that you're shipping to, that they do have a dock or they don't have a dock, any little bit of information you can supply certainly helps us. But I think we all probably take it a step further. We likely know the venues, or we'll be reaching out to the venues. Personally, I like to speak to the shipper receiver, and ask questions from the person there on that dock. They have quite often some finite detail that's important to all of us.
I always love this question because most people don't have loading docks. I think you pretty much covered it all. I think what I sort of will do is the implications of not having one. Safety of the artwork comes to mind. And knowledge is power. If you guys let us know what we're dealing with and how we have to deal with it on offload, we can come up with solutions for you, and we can help you keeping the safety of your artwork in mind. So for example, we get there and let's say our truck doesn't fit into a loading dock. Well, not only is the safety of the artwork important, that's gonna cost more time. It's gonna cost more money, not only for myself, for these guys, but also for your staff. So for example, if we're coming in maybe towards the end of the day because it's a direct shipment, you guys are on overtime. You've got to pay your staff to stay there. Your costs increase because of something so minor as not having a loading dock. Now, if we know all this information up front, we can be prepared for it. We can have equipment on site. We can, work with third parties to get the equipment that you require if, in fact, you don't have a forklift. That kind of thing. All of the knowledge is power, and asking questions and timing, all of that stuff comes back into play. And we, are first and foremost for you guys when you hire us to do the services is safety of your artwork. And not having a dock can sometimes impede on that safety.
Well, there must be some funny or anecdotal stories out there about loading docks, and I'm sure some of you could share with us. I could share some with you, but I don't want to offend any museums that might have poor loading situations. But loading docks are a problem, and major institutions across Canada have loading docks that are difficult and challenging to get to. Some of our vehicles have been designed to work around those problems. Our shuttle that goes across Canada is somewhat shorter than most trucks so that it can fit into most institutions. So it is a concern that we're always thinking about and can accommodate changes. If I don't mind, does anybody out there have any concerns with their specific loading docks, that they have any stories or challenges that they face on a daily basis? Does the director park in the museum loading dock every day? Those are some of the problems that we face on a regular basis. But we do have equipment to accommodate many situations that we run across. We have ramps available. We have tow motors or pump trucks available. We have extra staff that can be available. So we can usually work around any loading dock situation. Some loading docks are not actually, I was thinking of on the way down here about a lot of university art galleries are situated within a building, and their loading dock is not necessarily directly attached to the gallery space itself, and often we have to walk through a university space or hallways to get access to those galleries. So there's lots of things that, concerns that you have to work around. But as Robin had mentioned, if you allow us and provide us enough notice about your situation, then we can certainly work around them, yeah.
Maybe we can think about Gordon's question for the Q&A, if anything comes to mind. This was touched upon briefly as well. There's kind of two sub-points to question 4 about loading docks. This is touched on by both Robin and Scott, but I'll ask it in a two-pronged way, and starting with Scott. What type of equipment is needed, and what should institutions be requesting when booking? I.e., what does the shipper need to know?
Once we know if there's a loading dock or no loading, I guess once we know that there's a loading dock and we know that it's not height restrictive and it's easy access, then everything's fine from there. I think we all carry standard, call it standard moving equipment, so that we can handle any of the artwork packages, crates, and so on. For the locations that have no loading docks, that's where our specialized equipment comes in play. So I think, Robin, as you alluded to, we can reach out and get some of the equipment that's needed if it's a forklift, or we may have the right kind of equipment, perhaps a certain lift jack or bigger dollies, something that will help us to handle the crate or artwork safely off the tailgate to the ground. Extra pair of hands, certainly helpful. Seeing one driver out there on the tailgate with one hand on the piece and one hand on the button is not really great. So, the more that we know in advance, the more equipment we can prepare to have with us in advance, and the help. Certainly have the added staff to help out.
And if anybody's designing their loading dock now, we're happy to assist you in building the Taj Mahal of loading docks. It may be larger than your institution, but we're happy to help you.
Our drivers will thank you.
Yeah, drivers will thank you. That's very much.
I think just one more thing to that point. It's not necessarily in terms of equipment, but time of day has a really big factor in this, especially if you're located in a core city, such as Vancouver or Toronto. Parking, getting in there. You have a 53-foot trailer trying to back in on Queen Street West at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Good luck. These are things that we face, whether you have a loading dock or not, actually physically getting into your institution. So don't be surprised if one of us asks you a question about that, if we know we are coming in rush hour. A lot of times our drivers go in early before the rush hour, so we can guarantee to get in there to get a spot on your loading bay, and not being funny, in case somebody parks right in front of it, we can't get in. How are you going to load the artwork? That kind of thing. So all of those are very, very important, to a smooth transaction and the safety of the works that we are in fact moving to require less handling. Because the last thing we want to do is double handle that because we can't get into your loading bay.
Okay, so moving on to our final set question anyhow. The logistics of booking a tour. Do we have any tips on booking exhibits, ways of cutting costs? I know we've discussed some of those, but anything to add? Starting with Scott again.
Scott again. I thought you were picking on me with the fuel. Flexibility certainly helps us in knowing that you don't require your exhibition to be picked up or delivered on a set day and time, so that we can build it in. Again, we go back to it helps to cut down on the cost. Detailed information, as much detail as you can share, including accurate package and crate dimensions. I'm sure we all get accurate crate dimensions the first time, so I am probably the only one that's experienced it. We realize at some points in the quoting process, for us, when we're being asked to quote, the crates may not be built yet. That may be coming down the road. The designers are still working on that. Reasonable estimates are at least a great way to start. But as the dimensions become crystallized, share that with us. You know, I'd like to think we're amongst the first people that you'd let know, not the last, so that we can plan the space in the truck and the labor and everything that's required. There's a host of other suggestions here, but let me hand it down the line. Robin.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've covered quite a bit, and keep in mind we're 3 competitors sitting up here, so let's not forget that.
Friendly competitors.
Of course, of course. Competition is healthy. You know, again, to reiterate, I've said this the whole way through, is we're not scary and timing really is key. The more information that you provide us, length, width, and height of a crate would be good. I think some people sort of forget that third dimension. That is key. You know, when we do consolidated runs, some of your costs are based on cubic footage, trailer space that it takes up, and the weight and the height of those crates. So that's very important, you know, even if it is a very rough estimate. If it's, you know, a few inches off here and there, we can still work with it. We can get you what you need. If it's a cross-border shipment, does anybody here deal with those on a regular basis? Value is key. Whether you guys want custom service, like customs, and you want an all-inclusive price on all that, or you have a customs broker that we can work with, all of that is key because that will impact your budget. It will impact the cost in which we give you. Origin and destination, pretty important. Even if you don't know where it's going and it's literally for budget purposes, 1, 2, 3 years down the road, if you can give us some examples of where it may be coming to and going from, that kind of thing, that will help at least get a benchmark, and you can have something in your lap to go back to your team and your guys to say, you know, if it's going from here to Vancouver and it's approximately a crate that's 2 feet by 2 feet by 2 feet, here's the approximate cost you're looking at. And if you come back in 2 years, guaranteed that cost probably isn't going to triple. So, you know, it just depends what you're doing. We understand, we work with you guys day in and day out, and you are just requesting, you know, ballpark prices, and that's what we do, and that's what we're here to do for you. So don't be afraid in just hypotheticals to get some budgets going, to sort of get the ball rolling in terms of, can you afford this exhibit or can you not? Can it travel, can it not? That kind of thing. Any special requirements that you need on it would be really good right up front, because then there's no surprises in the end. So for example, we show up and there's no loading dock and we need extra hands, and you know, we've built 2 hours to offload and load a 53-foot trailer and it takes 4 hours. Well, unfortunately, those costs do need to get passed back, so there's no surprises on your end. Sort of, we like to do it, what you see is what you get, and then, you know, there's no fighting in the end, and there's no, oh my goodness, where do I have to pull from my budget to get this additional, you know, cost covered because I didn't anticipate it up front. So those are important things.
Gordon?
So I think one of the more important things about planning an exhibition is the scheduling, as we mentioned before, is planning well in advance. It allows us, if shipments are planned a few months in advance prior to their going, it allows us to troubleshoot, you know, especially if the things are crossing the border. We can present information to customs and allow them to review things so that we don't have any issues when we're crossing the border. We're very much an on-demand society these days, which is, you know, if we don't get it in 30 minutes, it's free. And that's not, although we would like to accommodate that, we would like to accommodate that, there are some practicalities that stop us from doing that. But we do want to work on on-demand service. In other words, if you've got a request and it's a priority, we want to find solutions for you. But that would not necessarily be the most cost-effective way of doing things. The more cost-effective way of doing things is to allow us enough time to review your requirements. And the other thing I would point out is that it's always better to do things in a consolidated way when you have many lenders coming to your gallery rather than piecemeal. It would be better to consolidate all of those lenders together and have one shipment than it would be to send each shipment individually. Although again, we can all accommodate that requirement. It's more cost effective if you can consolidate the shipment. And the point to all of this being is that the cost of planning an exhibition is always cheaper than the cost of shipping an exhibition. So if you can save time by planning and organizing something, eventually it will save you money in the long end. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Did you have anything to add there?
Yeah, I was just going to say it's free to ask questions. So don't forget that. That can help you in the end plan for unforeseen circumstances. So picking up the phone to ask us a question isn't going to cost you money, and it'll probably save you time and money in the end.
And stress. Of course.
Yes.
As per has been the format, I'd like to open up the session to questions.
I'll start. I guess one thing I would like to hear from you as an institution that may be going into the traveling exhibition, what do you see people doing wrong in the museum field? You don't have to name names, but when you show up and a museum has developed a traveling exhibition and you show up, what issues are you seeing that we need to sort of correct quickly?
A loading dock.
No, I've been first all the time. You guys feel free to jump
Okay,
in.
well, do you want to go?
No, go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Well, one of the things is when we're moving exhibitions and shows is the responsibility for loading vehicles and the responsibility for unloading vehicles. And really, it's always teamwork. So sometimes we show up with one driver, sometimes we show up with two drivers. And if the museum is anticipating that we're responsible for every aspect of moving those objects from your museum and onto our vehicle, then it's very time consuming. So if that can be planned around, where we have a number of people working on the project at the same time, people feel that they're paying for our services, then therefore they're entitled to us to look after every aspect of it. Well, it would reduce, our time in organizing things if we could get assistance. And the second thing is if objects could be properly prepared for transport. So when you run across an object that you think is, you have some questions about whether it's safe for transport, please refer them to us so that we can address your concerns. And I'm thinking of larger objects that can't be crated. I'm thinking of objects that have items within them that might have movement. And if you're looking for advice on how to properly prepare them, we're more than willing to provide that. But it is important that those objects be safe to handle by our technicians, have areas where you can safely strap them into our vehicle and be properly prepared. We're often given maybe lots of little pieces which are difficult to load, where they could be consolidated in a box, or we are given objects that don't have enough locations to properly strap them down, and then they become very time consuming to load and safely prepare for transport. So those are two of the things that we kind of look out for. Yeah, thanks for asking.
I'll step in here. I'll start by saying what you guys are doing right, because I don't like starting with a negative. We actually really appreciate how hands-on you guys are on the docks. And let's not forget that, because a lot of times you show up and there's no help and they don't choose to lift a finger. Your prep staff, your curators, a lot of you are very hands-on, and that's great. You're passionate about what you do and you care about your collection, and that comes through. And so thank you for that. I would say what sort of sometimes gets lost is actual piece weight and dimensions, because we often quote based on approximates, and sometimes we get forgotten about until we show up, and then all of a sudden our drivers are expecting a crate that's manageable maybe by either a single driver or a dual driver, and we show up and this crate is 10 times the weight and 3 times the size. So it's important to communicate and loop back in, and then again, it goes directly back to your budget, because you're sending something on a shuttle run that really wasn't quoted for. So we have no choice but to, and that could impact other shipments that are on that consolidated run if in fact we do have a full truck, right? And so we don't like disappointing anybody, including yourselves. So, if somebody sent, or even 4 pieces instead of 1 piece, right? That could impact the next client. And nobody likes making those phone calls saying, guess what, your stuff's not on the shuttle. We have no space. So just little things like that, communicating with us at every single point. I would say 10 emails is better than none. Don't ever think that you're bugging us or that you're a nuisance. This is what we do, and we can provide solutions, and we can react instead of, we can be proactive instead of having a reaction at the time of load.
This question's kind of already been answered a little bit, but what I'm wondering is, what are the reasonable expectations of a shipper when they come to deliver something? We had an exhibition on Sitting Pretty, the history of the toilet, that had a life-size outhouse. And we thought we had all the information from the venues until the shipper calls us and says, well, listen, they want us to carry an outhouse up 3 flights of stairs in a historic house where they have to lift it over their heads, and they are expecting the shippers to do that. So what are the reasonable expectations of a venue when a shipper comes and they do have something odd and they don't have an elevator or something like that and has to go up flights of stairs? Will shippers do that, or what will not do?
Well, if it's an outhouse, we might have questions. we
Unused.
Yeah, sure. But I think as long as we are aware of what's required, then we can bring extra staff in to provide those solutions. But I think Robin pointed out well was that often those expectations are placed in an email or a note or a message to us, and it's our responsibility to read them correctly and ask the questions. But if that's overlooked, then certainly we can arrive without being properly prepared. Yeah.
My first thing there goes back to our staff. And my first question would be back to my drivers. Is it safe? Can we do it? Outhouse or not, it's still deemed as artwork and needs to be handled appropriately. And sometimes that may mean coming back another day. That may mean hauling in a third party that specializes in cranes to lift it through a window. Like, what are we dealing with? And these surprises come up, I shouldn't say a lot, but they do happen. And, my first reaction is, what's safe for the artwork and what's safe for my guys on site? And so that's the first thing I survey, and then we go from there in terms of how we actually get it done. And can we get it done, or does a third party need to come in? What are the skill sets of the staff on site? Do they do this stuff all the time? Have they ever done it before? There's 100 questions that you could go through, but again, right back to safety.
I think any one of us are prepared to take on a challenge of any nature, provided we know in advance. And as Robin said, if we need to engage a crane operator to help hoist something, we can. If you want a helicopter, it takes a little longer, but we can get those too. So anything's possible. Arriving on site and all of a sudden there's a surprise like that, that goes back to somewhere in the communication flow of that shipment, some questions were missed or some information was missed. So hopefully that would flush out in the investigation process, so it wouldn't be a surprise. But fear not, we're all capable.
I have a question, and it's basically my expectation of companies like yours. When I'm dealing with a traveling exhibit that's coming to the museum, I want the driver to be a good driver, but I also want him to be the loadmaster. So can all you companies say that your driver is the loadmaster? Because we mean somebody who's responsible for the safe traveling and loading of that truck. And I expect you guys to be supplying that. So can all you say affirmative you do?
I actually have a driver here in the room. Hello, Leon. And his job is to safely secure your crates and your artwork into the truck. And if Leon doesn't want you on his truck, Leon will tell you he doesn't want you on his truck. And his sole responsibility is the safety and security to strap your crates in and your artwork on the truck.
the last thing you want to hear is, sorry, I'm just the driver, you know?
We understand, and that's why we hire professionals that are art technicians as well as drivers. So that's our standpoint there. Our guys are hands-on, and they do help.
There's a difference between a trucking company that handles skidded freight, and I call it the F word, to be honest. They move freight. That's where you'll experience a truck driver, and that's his function. He drives the truck, he hits the dock, and then he'll, expect somebody to take it off. That's that side of the business. That's not what we provide. You shouldn't experience that, and nor should you ever expect that.
I think that's something you need to emphasize, that the service you supply, because to my mind, it's more important really to be that it's loaded safely and unloaded safely, and if you can supply that, like that's going to be, in my book, that's going to be, you get check marks against your name, and I'll want to deal with your company.
Well, I was just going to say that that's sort of within our industry, that's a given. And I guess, it is interesting when people raise those questions, because that must have been a very poor experience for you to have. But within our industry, it is sort of a given that the people that we're hiring to drive our vehicles are also technicians, and can offer a wide range of services, from loading trucks to packaging artworks to troubleshooting, customs. So our drivers are experienced in a wide range of different services. Yeah.
So just building on that,
Yeah.
would, for the fine art shippers and for you guys, in your costs, is it assumed, as you were saying, is it a given that your drivers, when they come on site, will be expecting to be able to load and unload
And
for?
there's a wide range of services that we can provide on the truck and out of the truck in terms of load plans. I mean, we can, within our office, provide with load plans. If you provide crate dimensions, we can facilitate and let you know how large a vehicle you need, and we can provide the load plan so that you can line up the crates as you see them necessarily to go on the truck. So there's a wide range of services, and that should be expected. And again, that goes back to that idea of layers of service, layers of protection, is that our staff are experienced in handling our work.
Battery dead. There you go.
Just to add to that, that's what I was going to say. So when we went back and I sort of told you what exactly we require, and I said length, width, height, and weight, we can do load plans based on weight. And part of the safety of loading a vehicle is knowing the weights so that we don't load heavy crates all on one side, so when a truck turns a corner, we flip. So all of that information is really key up front. There's great load plan softwares out there that I'm sure we all heavily rely on and use on a daily basis, that allow us to see, like Gordon said, what size vehicle we need and how to properly and safely load a vehicle based on weights for the axles in the vehicle.
And like I said this morning, my remarks with regards to shippers had nothing to do with these people. But very much what you clarified, Scott, in terms of the commercial shippers who are used to doing the freight. And that's where we run into issues, because we're dealing with a regular moving company as opposed to a specialist in that. Which brings me to the point between lenders and borrowers, sometimes that line of what shipper, because I don't organize my shipping, it's done for me. So I get whatever shows up at that door and whoever that shipper is, because that's been organized by the lending institution. So I think maybe sometimes better communications between the borrower and the lender, so that we are prepared and we don't freak out a driver or freak out anybody else within the institution. I think just knowing what to expect when we get to the door, or when it comes to the door, is really, really important, especially in an institution like mine, because we're municipal. I can call in very easily laborers to help with that, but I need to know prior to the truck showing up at my door that I need 2 extra guys to come and help out and the forklift guy who's on another site. So those things, you know, if they're arranged, then it's a happy situation for everybody, and we can, and you'd be pleased to know that you can actually bring in those big trailers to my place. So hopefully sometime you'll be able to come and see me. So thanks.
I need to know, because in the past we used to have an exhibit transportation services company working for a lot of museums, and they were doing a lot of services, like they were coordinating a lot of the work for us, because a lot of museums were not, like, I mean, for me in traveling exhibitions, I'm the only one. And when I hear, if you can think in advance, if you can, it's a lot on our plates. We already have up to here. So my question is, would you have a database that you would enter all of the information about host venues, like loading docks and something like that? Like, would you consider having that kind of information so you can, instead of for us managing and remember who has a loading dock, like if you would manage that for us?
That's an interesting idea. That would be interesting. I think that knowledge is common to a lot of us, but you're correct with your institution. You might not be aware of other institutions. I think Scott and Robin and I both know the limitations of a lot of different museums, and but that information we sort of keep in-house only because we're the ones that seem to need it all the time. But you are more than welcome to call us if you have a question about another facility, and we can certainly ask. But there's no database of that information currently that I'm aware of, and I guess that would be something that would have to be developed if you wanted to do that, yeah.
Yeah, there's no external database.
Yeah, of limitations. I guess
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you maintain your facility reports for your museum in any specific database. I'm not sure if that's a common place or something that when you share information about your facilities, it usually does come up, the type of loading dock that a museum has. But I'm not sure how you convey that information back and forth between the various museums.
What I'm thinking is that I think it would be useful because, yeah, we do send out facility reports. Although what I'm thinking is that like some kind of centralized database for all of these shippers that you can put in all of the information, and whenever I call you and say, okay, well, I need one shipment to be, you know, picked up somewhere and delivered somewhere else, you would know by looking into your database, okay, they do have a loading, they don't. Like that would take some of our work off of our plate.
Yeah.
We
It's
actually,
just a recommendation.
yeah.
And the reality of every museum, because a museum can say, oh, yes, we have a loading dock, but we don't know what to look for. But when you arrive there, you know, oh yeah, but the loading dock is this thing. So you would give us that information, or you would have that information already, and you could share it amongst yourself, or I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. Yeah. But that would need to be developed. Absolutely, that would need developed. If in the meantime you do need information about a specific museum or institution, you can certainly ask us and see if we were aware of it, of the limitation.
I think that would maybe come back to origin and destination instead of perhaps just saying Sherbrooke to Calgary. If you could maybe provide us with the museums of where they're going from and to, that can eliminate what you're saying right off the bat. For example, if we know that a museum in Sherbrooke is a difficult museum to get a 53 in, or there's no loading bay, or only a 48-foot trailer will go in, we have access to that information because we've all been there, right? So providing that information right up front, I can say, hey, I know you can't put a 53 in there, so the maximum truck space you have available to get into that museum is a 48, and that's taken care of before we even quote. And then you know where you stand. So I think that the more information that you provide us up front, and I know everybody likes to keep all the information hush-hush and secret, We do have confidentiality agreements that, we're not to talk about things and share things, and, what you send us stays with us, and the more information you give us up front will definitely help. And that can be squashed right from the beginning.
Along the lines of what Rachel was saying, I'm also the only person taking care of or looking after traveling exhibitions at my museum, and we'd like to take advantage of sending a crate along with other museums' crates to go, let's say, out west or out east, but there's no way of knowing. And at first I used to book my own transportation for the exhibitions, but now it has to go through the internal service for the museums, right? For the 3 museums that I represent. So how do we find out how we can get, because I tell the guy at shipping that my dates for departure from our museums are flexible, though they have to arrive before a certain date over there. So I am flexible, but how do I know? Like he says, no, you have to give me a specific date, and you're asking for flexibility, which I totally get. So how do I convince them?
I think maybe it's feeding the information through, right? So if you are flexible, tell them that, and you can tell him that there's 3 shippers up here telling you that flexibility is key for your budget and our schedules. So if you just have a drop dead date, just give us that drop dead date. I need these crates at this location, at this museum by this date.
Because they could leave 2 weeks before.
Right, exactly. So if you can maybe go back and educate, because this is what it is. It's about educating everybody along the way to work together. And if you can educate them that, if you've got very specific dates to pick up and deliver, very different story. Mm-hmm. If you're flexible, just give us a drop dead date, or say, it doesn't matter, it just has to arrive sometime in July. And then, you get the best price for that, and we book it on a truck that would work for us, and everybody wins.
So I can get them to call you to explain,
Absolutely.
right? And on another subject about commercial shippers, when I first started in this job, I didn't know much about booking transportation or anything, and I have an exhibition that I was looking to transport from point A to point B. So I called a trucking company and I said, okay, I have this exhibition called Food for Health that I need transported. It's a 53-foot truck. So they showed up with a vegetable truck, with the slats at the bottom. So go with experimented people.
We've sold off all our vegetable trucks. None of us have any left.
Just to go back to your question too, or your point, was we do have a shuttle service, and we publish that schedule. So I'm not sure if that would be valuable information for your transporters to have as a copy of our schedule. So we all of us would be welcome to send our schedules to them so that they can look at where things are and where they need to be, and that they can follow that.
Procurement would have to see an example of if we go with another item, or if we go by ourselves.
Right.
In cost would be.
And that we can provide as well. But I can assure you that it is more likely, if it's a smaller object, that if you go on a shuttle service, that it would be more than likely less expensive.
Spin off that with the shuttle service, so again, I guess, if we have a whole exhibition, would a whole exhibition fit on a shuttle? Probably not, right? Because you're trying to load that up with stuff along the way, right?
We don't know. You really don't know unless you give us the sizes. So don't set that as an expectation in terms of your shipping. So fire it along, and then we'll provide you with what the rates are. So because our shuttles are often, they can be 5 tons, they can be tractor trailers. So depending upon where we're going, we're happy to look at it, and we're happy to change our schedule to accommodate your shipping. So if we have to put a bigger vehicle on a schedule shuttle, then we'll look into that, certainly.
And another thing is, it's generally a rule that you guys don't like stacking, but if there are a few crates that are lighter that can be stacked, let us know, because a lot of times, like I said earlier, in terms of what shuttle means, is you pay for the space and the cubic footage that your items take up on the truck, right? So if you have less feet on that truck and you can stack, let's say you have 20 crates and they can all stack on each other, too high, all of a sudden you've got a floor space that's maybe only 10 crates instead of 20 crates. And if we have a 53-foot trailer going to Vancouver and that's where your exhibit is going, it is possibly feasible to put that shipment on a shuttle versus, if you couldn't stack it, you may be into doing a full exclusive load somewhere that's going to cost you more money. So all those little key factors definitely help us help you get your budget down and to be able to ship works to be seen, basically, which is why we're in this business.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you to Scott, Robin, and Gordon, and thank you for all of your questions.